Hello, I'm your host, Leonard Duncan. Welcome to a new episode of ATV-TALK and Motorsports Podcast. Please join us every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We bring you interviews with industry professionals, live events, live news about the motorsports industry in every episode. Enjoy the show. David Ham, welcome back to ATV Talk. How are you, brother?
Doing fabulous. How are you today?
I'm doing great, man. Hey, I want to thank you for coming on. I know that we've had a lot of interactions in the last few weeks, and there's so much attention been put on the thousand and the team and everything that's going on with three wheelers and TPC. I want to switch it up on you and really get some insights from David Ham on team building, partner, your partnership with your teammates and things like that we never really get into. You're always giving accolades to everybody that you're involved with, but it's really important that we find out, how does David Ham fit into this? What involvement do you have in the picking the team, building the machines, the strategy behind it?
Okay. Well, building the machines, I've been blessed since almost day one of my racing to have some amazing people in my corner that, build the machines. But what they ask for me is feedback. We try to get as much testing as we can on machines. And, back a long time ago, I worked with a company called BDT Motorsports. And we were mainly racing at that time the 250R platform and developing some new stuff, but not trying to really reinvent the wheel. The 250R platform is legendary in its own right, and so we played around with stock cylinders, some big bore cylinders, and try to find what was the best thing for, as you would say, David Ham. We went back to Ashtabula several times and had some tough competition back there. And they have so many different classes for that platform. You could run, 200cc, you could run 250cc, stock cylinder basically, and all the way up to this highest bore you can get out of it. No stroker motors were allowed with that class. And then there was the open class, which was the big bore motors. And, you can get to the point with those two-stroke engines where you can make them put out more power than is needed or usable, where it actually starts working against you. And we played around with a lot of that back in the day. At Rob Selby playing around with some cylinders and some porting for me. And, I think engine builders, especially the two-stroke older school guys, they're all about trying to get that crazy power out of those engines. And it got to the point where we were building rocket ships that were making me slower instead of faster. So I found out what I like with a lot of R&D, and I like a torquey motor. I like a motor that basically I can short shift it, that it's got really low down grunt, that I don't have to rev the piss out of the engines like some of the two strokes were made to do. And that was just my own personal preference that I learned a long time ago about what I like in two strokes. Started playing around with the four-stroke platform a lot with the 350X, and I had Richard Massis built me a really cool 350X. It had, for the most part, it had almost all 250R geometry to it, but it had that 350X motor, and we did a little massaging to that, nothing crazy, and we started playing around with a lot of longer races using that motor. Because it was just it was such a durable platform. Not that you can't make a 250R durable. We just started playing around with that 350X, and I started entering a lot of longer desert races. When I say longer, at that time, they were, 100 milers and that kind of stuff. Vulture Mine stands out to me because that was a really brutal 100-mile race that we played with at that time. And we were taking that 350X and we were racing it against anybody and everybody that would show up for that class. There was predominantly 250Rs we were racing against, but every great once in a while 450s would show up. At that time, a couple guys showed up on TPCs, and I didn't own a TPC at that particular time, but that 350X came out on top a lot. It won a lot of races and upset a lot of, motors that had way more power, motors that just put it down. And again, I'd learned the hard way that power doesn't always mean you get on top of the box. You can get so much power where it's unusable and it actually works against you. And I played around with that and with the 250R stuff, and I had learned that that was the case. And I just wanted something that I could use all the power it had and feel really comfortable on the machine. And Richard was able to make a 350X that was exactly that. It was really reliable power that we could wring its neck for an entire 100-mile race and have zero issues with it. And it just chugged along and didn't wear me out. That was the key, just to have something that you felt so good with and so comfortable with that wouldn't make me tired in these longer races that we were playing around with. And that was really the key to my success early on when I started playing around with these longer desert races, was learning that, just finding something that you could ride a lot and feel comfortable on for long durations of time, that wouldn't wear you out, and was more than anything just really, really a reliable package.
So the phrase that I've been taught since I was a young boy, rideable, usable power.
100%. And again, I learned that the hard way by playing around with two strokes and trying to squeeze every ounce I could out of them. And there are certain tracks and certain conditions where that really, I always use the phrase at almost every course. I mean, whether I'm racing a desert course, a motocross track, a TT track, there's always that one straightaway or that one section of the track, usually, where you could use as much power as you can get. But the other 99% of the track or 90% of the track, really, you can only use so much power, or at least for my riding ability, I can only use so much power. And if you have a machine that puts out way more power than that 90% of the track can use, then that's where you have that factor where it just wears you down, wears you out.
And
Usable
in the
power.
development
That's
of
key.
I apologize, I stepped on you. Go ahead.
No, you didn't. Usable power is the key. Exactly like you said.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a motto that, my dad's been saying it, my brother's been saying it, I've been saying it. It's just the motto that we built everything that we do on.
Right. Right.
Rocket, okay, we'll build you a rocket, but here's your drawbacks.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
I learned that the drawbacks were big. And again, there's been so much work done by great motors builders. There's so many of you guys out there that have played around with that 250R package and the big bore cylinders and all this stuff. Is you all have learned how to squeeze them and make them crazy light switches if that's what you wanted to do. But those light switch motors on those two strokes are not, they don't transfer into majority of the races that we were racing on. And when you get a motor like that, it doesn't work. We were actually putting heavier flywheels on our big bore engines to try to make them run like 4-stroke motors and get them to chug down low. And we had a lot of success with that. But I some of these open class race courses that they race on back east, those OEM cylinders, when they're massaged correctly, were winning races. They were putting down more faster lap times than these big bore motors were. The big bore motors were making more peak horsepower if you throw them on a dyno, but I was learning real quick that that's not transferring to getting you on top of the box. And so I have a lot of respect for those OEM cylinders when they've put in the right hands and have the right porting done and the matching pipe and all that stuff on those 2-stroke cylinders. It's amazing on how much usable power you can make out of those cylinders.
it's all comes down to what you could get the rear tires to grab traction with, and you're already struggling with a 2-stroke to get straight ahead drive. And when was the last time that you've seen a race ridden and won at peak.
Yeah, doesn't happen. I mean, I'm not even sure if I'll even go as far as to say, um, you know, that Hetrick has the most power on that starting line at this moment. I think he has the most usable power on that starting line, and he knows how to use it to its full potential. And that's getting him to the top of the box.
Dude, you watch that guy's bike work?
Amazing. Just
It's Elka and Impact Solutions. I don't know what they're doing. Whatever they're doing, they just keep doing it because it's working.
it's poetry in motion. I mean, that what that guy's doing right now, rewriting the record books on wins in a row is really unbelievable. And I think that's a stacked field too. From what I can tell, all those guys are great riders. I mean, when you look second through seventh, it's tight and it's changing positions all the time. But one thing stands out is that guy that's on top of the box seems to be staying there year after year right now.
Yeah, it's kind of a phenomenal thing, but it's not. In the ATV world, we've got our share of champions that have won over and over and over and over again. And I don't know what it is about ATV racing or three-wheeler racing that causes that, but you're not seeing a lot of industries or a lot of motorsports where your champions are dominant like that for years and years and years. I know it's been done in motocross. I mean, there are some exceptions to that rule, but it's not an exception in the ATV world. It's kind of the rule. You're going to have a champion
Yeah.
that's going to win multiple championships.
Well, last year I had a really awesome streak where I had an undefeated season last year, and that was pretty special to me. I was able to win motocross races and WORCS races and desert races all in one season and run the gauntlet and not have a loss the whole year. We had a major mutter at the beginning of the year at Glen Helen, and that went away for me. I ended up getting second place. Had some kind of crazy luck and big giant mud puddle. I got stuck behind some quads, but nonetheless, when you're at the starting line and you can look left and look right and not want to trade your machine for any other person who's at that starting line machine, it's a really good feeling, and it breeds some confidence in you on that starting line. And even when you don't get the best start and maybe have to come through the pack, when you're at one with your machine, that's what it's all about right there for me. I very blessed to live where I live, and you've come out and played around in my world a little bit, and I can ride almost from my front yard, and I mean I can literally ride hundreds of miles in almost any direction right now. And if I had to pick one factor that has helped me in the last 5 to 6 years, it's that I can get out and ride anytime I want, and I think I ride a little bit more than most people, especially when it comes to the couple of weeks prior to the race. I know I've talked to a lot of my competitors, and they don't ride as much as I do, especially 3 weeks prior to a race. And for me personally, that's been the number one key to my success is that, and having just a machine that I feel great about and feel one with. And now we're obviously racing these 450s and TPC, and there's been so much development done on that engine in the last going on 20 years now, where that 450 motor's been out almost.
Are you looking for the best suspension technology for your sport ATV? Look no further than Elka Suspension, the industry leader in sport ATV suspension technology. With championship wins in prestigious events such as the Dakar Rally, SCORE, Best in the Desert, ATV MX, Cross Country, and WORCS, Elka Suspension has established itself as the go-to choice for athletes and enthusiasts alike. But they don't just stop at ATVs. They're constantly expanding into new markets, including UTVs, trucks, SUVs, pit bikes, snowmobiles, and more. Their commitment to innovation and quality means they're always looking to improve and adapt so you can enjoy a smooth ride wherever you go. Want to learn more about what Elka Suspension can do for you? Visit their website at elkasuspension.com or give them a call at 450 655 4855. They will always be happy to answer your questions and help you find the perfect suspension solution for your needs.
That, that you engine builders, you got it figured out, how to make really good, reliable, useful power is that key word we keep using. And we're doing exactly now with that 450, what we did with the 350 and the 250R previously, is just find that happy medium where you're making reliable and peak power in that happy category that's usable for the rider. And every rider's a little bit different. A lot of the riders that I've raced with in the past, I've ridden their machines and they've rode my machines, and we both have said, how do you ride these things? The motor's just not in our happy spot. Every rider has its own happy spot. And for me personally, I like a motor that's got a lot of torque and grunt.
I think most of those guys haven't been trained properly. That's why.
Yeah. I go back to the two-stroke days where, I wasn't winning a lot of races, and some of the guys that were riding against me, just whatever their package was with suspension and motor and all of that stuff, they were just more at one with it. And it took a while for me to learn what works for me, and what works for me doesn't necessarily work for everybody else. Right now with my 450, my personal bike that I've been racing in WORCS the last few years, I feel really at one with that bike. I got more seat time on that the last 5 years than I do on anything else. And even when Bill builds these amazing machines that we go out and race in the desert, using the 1000 as the closest example, because we just did that a couple weeks back. I personally, as amazing as that machine was, I would have taken my own personal machine for any one of the sections that I rode. I rode 5 sections of that race, and I got used to it and it handled great, and I was able to get the job done on it. But my own personal bike, just because it's the bike that I practice on so much, that's the bike where I just feel at home at. I don't have to think about anything. They're just instincts just take over and you just ride. I mean, there's been several times where I've seen in pictures things that I'm doing on that machine that I would have swore to you at the end of the race I didn't do. And you see it in the picture, and you're not even thinking about doing things. You're not thinking about grabbing the clutch in the corner. You're not thinking about where you grab the front brake on. You're not thinking about where you lean all the way over to one side of the three-wheeler off the side. You just do it. It doesn't even, it's not even conscious. And that, when you get to that point on any machine, that's when it's really fun. That's when it's just, it's a tough package to beat once you get to that level where you just can go out there and just ride it and not think about racing, just go.
Right. You mentioned the two-stroke development process. Do you think that, and I'm not capping on age, but as an older rider and an older racer, do you think that trying to ride a two-stroke at an older age is much harder on your body than it is to ride these modern day four-strokes?
No doubt about it. I get lazy, especially on the package that I'm racing now. It's so forgiving. I mean, you can go around corners in second, third, fourth gear, and it just will go around that corner at whatever speed you want to go around it in any one of those gears. And it's just so much effortless compared to what it used to be when I was on the two-stroke. But I will add to that, I firmly believe, you and I have talked about how riding a three-wheeler will make you better on a quad. I believe that same philosophy could be on a two-stroke. I think going out and riding two strokes could help you ride a four-stroke in a sense that it takes more shifting. That window and that happy spot of that machine where that motor's making that really usable power on a two-stroke, most of the time that window is a lot smaller of a window in the RPM range. And to learn how to ride that machine and shift it so much to always keep it in that happy spot, I think that transfers over into making better four-stroke riders too.
Sometimes I see that it's a detractor though, because it causes people to rev the four stroke too much. And I'm an over rever. Okay, I over rev everything. The four strokes, the two strokes. It's just, some of us over rev, some of us don't. If I'm gonna build a race machine, I want torque. I
Yep.
want roll on power. I don't want people freaking on the rev limiter going bop, 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 all the time, because I think it's counterproductive to where the machine is happy.
Yeah, I mean, when we played around with the two-stroke dynos back in the day, we got to the point where we were just trying to develop the pipe intake and cylinder to just put out the most torque. We didn't even pay attention to the horsepower curve. If we could find that package that just gave you the most torque, that was always transferred to me to be the best rideable machine that just put the power to the ground. And it made that transition from two-stroke to four-stroke really easy because we did find a two-stroke package that was four-stroke like in its power delivery. So when I made that 100% commitment just to go to four-stroke and four-stroke only, it wasn't as drastic as it would be if you were riding some two-stroke where you had to just keep it on the rev limiter to make it perform.
Right. Do you watch some of the younger kids ride those four strokes now?
Yeah, I think we're coming to that generation. It's been here for a while where the kids have that's all they've known. They've never even rode a two-stroke. There's a lot of really elite level racers today that are not like me, that never rode a two-stroke in their past. They're young enough where the four-stroke thing had basically it was already alive, and that's all there was to offer when they were young, and they don't know any different. So I think that's a lot to do with just some of these amazing riders we have today on these four strokes is they're just really at one with the power delivery of a four stroke, and that's all they've known when they were riding their little machine coming up through the ranks. It was a four stroke. Where if you go back 20 years, most of the people as they were coming up through the age group brackets, they were on two strokes, and then when they got to the pro class, if you want to call it that, that's when the four stroke kind of came to be for most people.
If you were, let me rephrase that. So we're going to build a two-stroke hybrid TPC. Let's say we use a YZ250 motor, or we use the KTM 300 motor. Is that something that you'd be interested to take to the starting line and race?
I would like to try it. That 300 motor, it's been out enough now where I I know a lot of people who ride dirt bikes that have had every dirt bike imaginable, and they have said that that bike is their favorite. Not only is it their favorite because it has that two-stroke smile capability that we all know and like, but they also claim that it lugs like a four-stroke. And with the fuel injection and everything they have today on those bikes, how forgiving it is, and it's always jetted correctly, and they have different mapping now that they can just push on the handlebars and give it the power delivery they're looking for compared, to what kind of terrain they're riding in and everything. I have not had the pleasure of riding that. There are people that have put that in a three-wheeler. Um, that will be coming out pretty soon in a three-wheeler that I'll be able to ride. And I'm really looking forward to that, but it's just not quite done yet.
Well, one of the guys in the three-wheeler group has a conversion, a motorcycle conversion 300.
Right. I've raced against him several times on that KTM 300.
And you haven't got to ride that machine.
He's offered. It's just been one of those things that I just haven't taken him up on it yet. No, I haven't. His is a motorcycle conversion. So, not to go down that rabbit hole that we've already talked about in the past and beat it to death, but there's pros and cons about that one he has. But that to have that power plant being the kind of setup that I've grown to like, the TPC, platform, I think that would be a really fun machine.
In your opinion, based on some of the conversations that we've had, do you believe that the modern day three-wheeler race community is going to grow?
You know, I'm I'm a skeptic in the sense that I hope that it's going to, but if I was a betting man, I would say no. Just we're missing the youth. I mean, we're getting reeling in some younger guys into some of these races with us, and there are some out there. I mean, earlier in the season at Glen Helen, I think we had a full gate, and I wasn't the oldest guy at that gate. There was one gentleman that was older than me, but there was three or four guys that were young on three wheelers at that starting line, and they're great riders. Um, we just need more of that. You know, most of the races that we're getting now, we're not having the majority of the guys on the starting line are not what I would consider young. And young to me is under 40. Anyone under 40 at this stage, I'm calling young. I think it's a little bit too aggressive for me to say I want a bunch of 20-year-olds on three wheelers at the starting line. I'd settle for a bunch of 40-year-olds on the starting line right now, but that's not the case. There's usually, at best, we got a 50-50 mix of guys over 40 or under 40.
Okay. What do we need to do on the West Coast to help our racing community? I'm not just talking about three wheelers. I'm talking about three wheelers, quads. What do we need to do to improve this?
Well, one of the things is make cool machines that are ready to be ridden. I'm not even talking about raced, just ridden recreationally, because that's where I think it all starts. I mean, I don't know a person that had their first experience ever on a quad or a three wheeler at a race. They've all played around with those machines prior to get involved in racing. So we need some really cool recreation machines being built by the manufacturers that are made for 8 to 14-year-olds. We don't have those. Those are gone. Those are a thing of the way, past. You have to go buy older machines and kind of fix them up a little bit to make them cool for that age group right now. We need more manufacturers to build machines like that for there to be any hope for the future, is the way I see it.
I totally agree. I mean, that's hitting the nail on the head because there's no middle machine. They're bringing the KO in from China, the 300, and that's going to help. But the restrictions on age that the government's put on it actually hurts it because you're going to put a kid on there that's too big to ride it.
Well, I think I think when it comes to the recreation part of it, going out and just having fun with your family and not even in the desert, but just out fun with your family riding, that's parent discretion. It's always been that way. There's always been the parents, the responsible parents decide when the child's ready to ride the machine, not the manufacturer. I know that that's what they're designed for. That when the manufacturer puts that sticker on it saying no one under 16 or whatever, but it's still that way today. I mean, I myself as a father, if I want to put my son on a machine, I can go buy that machine regardless of what the sticker or the recommendation is and get my son riding that machine. So they just need to build those machines and let the parents decide.
You think as a group of off-road enthusiasts, we need to be smarter?
Yeah, definitely more responsible. I mean, we can go back with all the irresponsible stuff that took place in the 70s and 80s. It got the three wheeler in trouble. And I think that lesson was learned by not only the manufacturers, but I think by the parents. I'll go the opposite end of the spectrum right now. I would say that parents today are too soft in that sense, that parents don't want to even let their kid try to ride anything with a motor because they're worried about them getting hurt. um, I think that that's the bigger problem than parents, being crazy. I think there's a bigger problem with parents being overprotective, in my opinion.
Yeah, there's some of that as well. I mean, it's not like it was when we were kids, because you and I are similar in age. Go ride your bicycle with no helmet. We got to get away with so many things that you don't see children doing today. It's unbelievable.
100%. Yeah. And going back to the setup on the three wheelers or quads, it doesn't really matter. But we talked about motors and two strokes and four strokes and all that, but there's so much more to the setup. Suspension technology is huge. And I made that major mistake when I was younger, always trying to squeeze more power out of my motor, and every dollar I could have, I was going into motor performance. But what I learned was I was spending money in the wrong place. If I would have really tried to get the rest of the package at its best before I even messed with the motor, that would have been the smart way to go. I made that mistake and learned the hard way. But what I know today, if I had to do it all over again, I would get some awesome suspension. I'd get some flex bars. Just there's so many components. The right length swing arm. Experimenting with that was huge in the early days of three wheelers. By just taking a swing arm and shortening it an inch or adding an inch to it completely changes that machine. And learning, I always say it helps that two stroke, especially keep the power to the ground by just playing with that swing arm length.
Well, back in the day when they raced them, most people don't realize this. They ran negative ones.
Yeah. Yeah.
Run plus, like everybody puts plus two on there now. They ran minus ones on the motocross bike.
Oh, I know. Yeah. Well, those guys back there, they were masters of steering with the rear end. And that's kind of almost a lost art form when it comes to three wheelers. The guys back east are doing it a little bit more in that TT setup with their tire selection and stuff, but you don't see a lot of that out here where guys are sliding around corners and that kind of stuff. They're more driving them around the corners and stuff. But I think the four stroke motors of today make it easier to do that too, to drive them around corners instead of slide them around corners.
100%. 100%. Your two
Yeah.
stroke you're going to generally drift it through the turn where you're driving it through on a four stroke, because you don't have the same the tires aren't breaking loose the same.
Right. Right. And I can say that just from my own, 15 to 20 years of riding and on courses and tracks, the tracks are different today. Most of the tracks and even your recreation riding, the side by sides are out on the trail so much more than any other vehicle now, that the trails are super wide. Even on the race courses, they're made for side by sides now. Where if you go back 20 years, some of those, the WORCS type racing, I don't want to call it single track because single track's a term for motorcycles, but it was single track for quads. It wasn't much wider than a quad, a lot of the spots. And now almost every part of the course is as wide as a big side by side, which makes passing so much easier today than it used to be. Almost every part of these courses is wide enough to squeeze a pass in.
Right. I want to change it up on you a minute here. We talked motors and suspension. Another big component of some of this success you've had in the desert is picking a team. So how does David Ham involved himself in actually picking his teammates for, a group that has cohesion, so there's not a negative vibe?
Well, I've been super blessed in the sense that I've been at this with the three wheeler thing for, going on 15 plus years now. So, you just meet so many people out racing and traveling around the Western states and meeting different people and being able to ride with other people and race with other people and get to know them on a personal level, their personality. And I just have so many people that I can kind of reach out to and see if they're interested in these races. But picking the right team, you have to be like-minded people. There's a lot of people out there that I've chosen not to ask to be a part of my team, and it's not because they're not great riders. I mean, some of them are the best as far as racing. But you got to find people that are team players, and some of the best riders out there either win or crash. And in this desert race, and in the desert racing game, I don't want those kind of people. Um, Crashing is not a component in team racing that you want involved. When it's a single person racing on a motocross track or a TT track, there's a lot of great guys that win or crash, and they do crash 20% of the time, and then the other 80% of the time they win. But that doesn't transfer over to the guys I want on my team. I want the guys on my team that get on the box 99% of the time and crash less than 1% of the time. Those are the guys that I want involved in my team. But I also want guys that are team players. What I mean by that is when things go wrong in a race, they don't freak out and start pointing fingers at other people or give the guy a hard time who made the mistake, whether that be in the pits or the guy building the bike or fellow racers on the team. We're all human. We all make mistakes. You got to be cool headed, and just the show goes on. There's been some guys I've been involved with in the past that seem to have blown up a little bit under the wrong circumstances when a mistake gets made. And I've yet to do a long desert race where there's not mistakes. And the teams that we've been racing with as of late, when those mistakes get made, they don't get upset. They don't freak out. They don't point fingers. They come together as a team, fix the mistake, and the show goes on. And that's, live to fix that mistake on the next race where we don't make the same mistake twice. And having guys that comprehend that and say, we're probably going to make mistakes today. It's a 1,000-mile race and there's probably going to be mistakes made, but we're not going to freak out when those mistakes made. We're just going to continue on, and we're going to do our best when it comes to the next race, not to make that same mistake again.
Does age have a factor in your choices? Are you ready to be captivated by one of nature's masterpieces? Discover the breathtaking beauty of Antelope Slot Canyon, a natural wonder in Page, Arizona. Join us on a guided tour and immerse yourself in the mystical light beams, rich colors, and serene landscapes. With tours at prime sunbeam hours, experience photographer's paradise and capture memories that will last a lifetime. Comfortable shoes, a camera, and a smile are all you need for this adventure. Book your journey today at Antelope Slot Canyon Tours and let the canyon enchant you. Please visit us now, antelopeslotcanyon.com, for more details.
To say no would be, I can just look at the history of the guys that I race with. They're definitely older. But I think it's just because when I'm looking for guys that check all those boxes that I just got done talking about, they just happen to be the older guys. And especially when it comes to three-wheelers, I think in the quad world, it's probably easier to come up with a bunch of young guys that you can check those boxes with. But in the three-wheeler world, most of the guys that have the experience, that to have the cool-headedness, that have the knowledge on how to roll with the flow of the mistakes that are probably going to be made, have a tendency to be guys that aren't spring chickens anymore.
There is a lot to be said for that. Favorite machine ever?
Wow. It's so tough. I've had the machines that I own right now. I would obviously, I can choose to race so many different things, and I'm choosing to race the TPC as of right now, but I've had a lot of great memories and success on that 350X. I've had a lot of great memories and success on that 250R platform. I'll just go out on a limb and say the TPC right now definitely is my favorite machine of all time. But there was some really coolness racing that 350X against 250Rs and 450s and winning that. That machine will always have a soft spot in my heart. It was just an overachiever. Even back in the 80s when Honda was putting major money and team efforts into racing three wheelers, they weren't even choosing to race a 350X. Everything was on a 250R. So it was pretty cool that we were able to get that 350X and massage it to the point and get friendly enough with it that we were able to win a lot of races on that. That was pretty special times. But I don't think that machine in its best day would compete with what we're riding today.
No, I don't think so either. Horsepower, handling, it's limited. For what it is, it's awesome, but it's still limited. To a
Yeah,
point.
no, it is. But again, I come back to that same thing we were talking about, just becoming one with the machine. I mean, just to have any pilot on any machine that becomes one with it. I see it a lot when I'm a fan of motocross right now, and there's some of those guys on those 250s are putting in lap times that would finish them in the top 10 in the 450 class because of they're at one with that 250 machine, and the course is a type of course that it can't necessarily handle any more power for the majority of the course, and that 250 can put down. And those younger guys that are racing those 250s, they're no joke, man. When they're on those machines and they're on point, they're having a race. I mean, Deegan comes out. If you look at Deegan's lap times on most of those races, it would put him in the top 4 or 5 sometimes on the 450 class. It's crazy how fast those guys are.
We'll see when he gets up there.
Hey, I'm just going on statistics right now. If you look at his
I
lap
know.
times right now, I'm not
I'm
saying
just
I'm a huge fan of the guy. I'm not a huge fan of him, but again, you can't take
I'm
nothing away from what he's
I'm
doing.
struggling to not be biased.
Yeah,
Not a
yeah,
lot of people
yeah,
are honest about it. Sometimes I just can't hide it. They,
yeah.
they
But
I
I
just
think it was in the past too. I mean, you've been around the sport a long time. I mean, James Stewart on a 125 versus the 250 guys when he was on his prime. His lap times on that 125 when he was winning championships were amazing.
yeah. I mean, I, don't you wish we could take of all the sports that we watch, the three wheelers, the four wheelers, motorcycles, take the greats of those times and put them together with the greats of other times. I know the machines don't match up because if you look at what Ricky Johnson was winning on, and then you look at what McGrath was winning on, they're not the same bikes.
Yeah,
Technology's not the same. Then you get Carmichael's machines, they weren't the same as McGrath's, Stewart's machines weren't the same. So it's really hard to put them together. But the smaller bike is actually easier to ride. Yes, it doesn't make as much power, but you can hold it wide open way longer.
right. Yeah, and flex bars. I
Big
mean,
difference.
when I get on a bike without flex bars and try to ride really hard, I go, "How did I used to do it?" It it vibrates me to death sometimes, and
Age.
that's a
No offense, do you
yeah.
like to get on a bike without flex bars?
I know, I know. A lot of I did it right on flex bars for most of my racing career, and now when I get on something that doesn't have them, I just kind of shake my head. It's just one of those things that allows me to continue to ride and have success. If I was forced to ride machines without them, I guarantee I wouldn't be having the success I'm having at my age.
Right. I totally agree. I totally agree. If we were going to talk to the youth male, female, what would you be telling them? And what would be some things where you would direct them in their racing career?
Just ride. Go out with friends, and whether those friends are fellow racers or non-fellow racers, and just ride in as many different circumstances and as you possibly can. And I just the seat time is something that there's no replacement for. I mean, exercising in the gym and doing all kinds of different forms of exercise that is great today for helping riders and stuff, but nothing will replace seat time. Nothing. Go out and whether it's on a track or trails or whatever, just become one with your machine. Just go ride it as much as you possibly can.
That's a good thing to tell them. Last thing before I let you go. Favorite race moment of all time?
Well, there's been so many cool ones, and it's all circumstantial, I guess, if you would have asked me after any big one, but I'm gonna go with two. I'm gonna say it was a tie. Winning the 2 years ago, we raced Vegas to Reno against another awesome team of amazing riders, and there I do not believe there was ever more than 2 minutes in between us. And I think it was, don't quote me on this, I think it was 535 miles of racing and on a three-wheeler of switching riders almost every pit. And to have I mean, changing leads like crazy. I can't tell you how many changes there were, but when we came across the finish line, we didn't know who won. It was so close coming across the finish line, and we had to take into consideration penalties. We had to take into consideration who started first on the starting line and all of that. But it was such a tight race that there was neither one of the teams knew who won. And they couldn't, Best in the Desert couldn't even tell us who won. They had to literally go back to the books and take a whole bunch of stuff into consideration. And the winner wasn't even announced for a couple of days. So the suspense was insane, but that was an intense race. And we ended up winning that race. That was pretty special. And then, this 3 weeks ago, we won the 1000, and, it was the longest single day race in our country's history. And, to win that race was just as special. So I would just say it was a direct tie between both of those races.
So you're pretty much saying that the success that you've had over the last 4 or 5 years is pretty much surreal.
Yeah, I've done so much more winning than I ever dreamed of doing, and even racing, not even winning, but you know, I just take it year by year. I don't have a deadline on it or think of really what I'm going to do the next year until this year's over with. And it's been like that since the very beginning when I first started racing. And Yamaha Quad Cross Series was my first race, and every single year I've been able to go after a different championship or another championship in some series, and had more than my fair share of success during all of that. But I would say the last 3 years in winning these longer desert races, it's been so much fun, and the team racing thing, and to be able to share these wins and these experiences with dear friends of mine that race three wheelers with me on my team, and the people that were our pit support that had just as much to do with winning those races and those series, and the builders putting the bikes together and making sure that we have the best machine at the starting line for so many races in order to win these series. To share that experience with so many different people makes the last few years so much more special than those first few years.
That's what I love to hear, bud. That's what I love to hear. Hey, thank you so much, David Ham, for coming on ATV Talk. We'll be back in touch. Remember, we run 3 different shows a week. Check us out on Instagram, YouTube, and all your audio platforms. David, this is an audio show, so you'll hear it on Spotify or Apple Podcast or whatever your podcast platform is. And that'll be Tuesday at 5 o'clock. I don't have an exact date for you, but we'll get it to you as soon as we can. So anybody that you got out there, share the show, subscribe, like, help us in the algorithm. We really appreciate all your support, and make sure you get out and call your Elka dealer, because they're the guys that are making it happen for ATV Talk. Got anything for closing, bud?
Nah, just I hope there's a day where I'm no longer racing. I'll be riding till I die on something, but I hope there's a day where I'm not racing anymore and I'm able to go watch people race three-wheelers still when I'm no longer racing them.
I hope that day happens too. So do I. All right, brother. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. Have a great night, and I appreciate your time. Hello, I'm your host, Leonard Duncan. Welcome to a new episode of ATV Talk and Motorsports Podcast. Please join us every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We bring you interviews with industry professionals, live events, live news about the motorsports industry in every episode. Enjoy the show.